Welcome to the inaugural presentation of RadHQ's Radiology webinar series. The series has been designed to allow radiologists to share solutions to problems that impact day-to-day operations, and in the process, hopefully provide ideas that help improve overall productivity and profitability. Today's presentation is titled Relief from the Tyranny of the Worklist, and will be presented by Dr. Murray Reicher, FD, Fellow of the American College of Radiology. Dr. Reicher is the founder and chairman of former PACS company DR Systems and is currently CEO of Synthesis Health. Dr. Reicher has been a radiologist for over 30 years and was the head of one of the oldest radiology groups in the country prior to starting DR Systems. The presentation will last about 30 minutes, with 15 minutes or so reserved for questions and answers. Should you have any questions or require clarification, please type this information in the Q&A menu at the top of the screen. Now, without further ado, let me turn it over to Dr. Reicher. Dr. Reicher, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you hanging in there. I know you're under the weather. Thank you to everybody that's here today. I'm pleased to present to you Relief from the Tyranny of the Worklist, a hot topic for radiologists all over the country. By way of introduction, my name again is Murray Reicher. I'm a radiologist. I started in healthcare in 1977 when most hospitals in the U.S. did not have a CT scanner, so I've witnessed a renaissance of radiology and probably no time as high in stress for radiologists as the present time. I've had a pretty eclectic career. I was involved in the early development of magnetic resonance imaging. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I was the first person that ever put a human joint inside of an experimental MR scanner. I was involved in the development of one of the first PACS systems, actually the first PACS system to embrace the personal computer. We had the world's first installations of filmless hospitals and imaging centers right here in San Diego County back in 1993. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a historical perspective because I think history can teach us how to cope with present situations and see if we can take some of the lessons that we've learned along the way in order to create a better environment for radiologists. By the way, I said this was a high stress time for radiologists. This is also an extraordinarily high opportunity time for radiologists and people in medical imaging. So I always say good meetings start with clear goals. My goal today is to make a few friends, to engage in a discussion. I'll be speaking for a little while, but then there'll be plenty of time for questions and comment. I invite any of you after this meeting to follow up with me as well. And so with the goal of making friends and sharing information, let me proceed. The outline of today's talk, we're going to talk about how to read faster with less stress, how to eliminate repetitive, redundant, and error-prone processes in the workplace, how to get help from your colleagues and staff when you need it without interrupting your workflow, how to expand your practice and the financial success of your radiology group or you as an individual, hopefully both, and how to provide services for many locations as if they were all one. So I don't want to belabor it, but first a little bit of a historical perspective. It's 1975. Radiologists are mostly all men sitting in basements looking at shadows. Even the images you see on the lower left corner of this device, the roloscope or the alternator here, even those cross-sectional images didn't exist yet because we're still a decade away from the invention of the laser camera. Radiologists are reading about 8,000 exams a year. We think we're reading at peak efficiency, even though those 8,000 exams probably meant about 15 to maybe 25,000 images, at the most 50,000 images in a year's time. There are people who hit those types of numbers in a day today. The ensuing decade becomes a renaissance for the field of medical imaging. The advent of first CT, then multi-slice spiral CT, MRI comes into play. Medicare funding begins around 1986. PET later in the decade. Ultrasound between the late 70s and mid 80s goes from kind of B mode ultrasound to real modern ultrasound. Nuclear imaging steps into the modern age. And then in the next decade, we have DEXA, full field digital mammography, breast tomosynthesis. By 1980, there was this common vision that medical imaging was going to be digital, but we didn't have standards through which vendors could intercommunicate. And PACS spent maybe 15 years crossing the chasm between an interesting toy for technophiles and a business tool that everybody had to have. And it's important to realize this history because AI is doing the same thing right now. It's had its 15-year incubation period, and AI seems to be popping now and about to have a major impact on the clinical practice of medicine and in radiology. Recognize that there are now about 700 vendors with regulatory clearance in North America and Europe, and about 80% of those vendors with regulatory clearance for AI applications are in medical imaging. By the mid-1980s, 3M had invented the laser camera. If anybody's old enough to remember, those are those big, beautiful black background films that you could print MRs, CTs, nuke med studies on. And that was the beginning of networking. Until that time, there was really no reason to have two imaging devices connected to each other or anything else. You would image, you would make film, and all of a sudden laser cameras came out and they were expensive, and somebody thought, hey, maybe we could save some money if we hooked one laser camera up to two different devices. And that was the beginning of the network. And think of it, jump forward from the 1980s to today, those networks have expanded to the entire world. And whereas in the 80s, and even as recently as 5 years ago, radiologists went to work, like I did my whole career, got dressed, went to work. Today, we live in a world where every radiologist is a teleradiologist. Whether you work at home or at a hospital, a good part of your day, if not most of your day, is spent reading medical images obtained at remote sites. That's the future, and that's the future we have to build for. Well, by the mid-1990s, we had eliminated medical film. We had a product called the Dominator, which was the reading station for DR systems. We had the motto that the Dominator is the Terminator, and in fact, alternators went away. I remember going to radiologists and saying, we're going to double your efficiency. In fact, radiologists more than doubled their efficiencies when they, as part of the move from film to non-film based medical imaging. But at the time, they didn't believe that they would. Every radiologist felt there was no way they could ever be faster than ripping films on and off an alternator, and yet they doubled their speed. So today, again, lesson of history, I would contend to radiologists that your efficiency is about to double again. You may find that unbelievable, but it's going to, because still today, the majority of the time that radiologists spend looking at medical images and generating reports is wasted time doing processes that are error-prone and redundant. And we better double our efficiency because we're about 10,000 radiologists short in the US alone, and we probably have the best supply of radiologists per capita of any country in the world. So what have we learned? We've learned from work process reengineering that it's not enough to work faster. You have to work smarter. Working smarter means eliminating all non-value added processes. It means treating radiologists like they're track athletes at the Olympics, removing all extraneous movement that is non-value added, that doesn't promote the diagnosis of the patient, or in some cases, the treatment of the patient. You also have to understand when you're plotting your vision what the customer really values. Our customers ultimately are our patients. And whereas when a patient sees an internist, they value the time spent with the doctor. When patients are asked what they value about a medical imaging exam, the answer is the fastest possible exam with an immediate report. And so because we are not in direct patient care, we have the capacity to become more and more efficient while improving the core value proposition to the patient, not detracting from it. So we used these lessons and we eliminated a lot of workflow practices in the past. We got rid of searching for film, hanging film, ripping it down from an alternator, sticking it in a cardboard envelope. We got rid of typing and filing and filling out preliminary reports on paper slips. We got rid of driving to the hospital in the middle of the night to look at one CT scan. We got rid of manual coding. So there was a 25 to 30 year process of removing some of the core wastes of time in medical imaging and sources of error, things like lost film and miscommunication, lost reports, etc. We improve things. But at the end of the day, in all humility, and I've got a motto that you can never be too humble, when you look back, we really haven't fundamentally affected the reading process yet. And we're about to. Just like CT went from standard CT to spiral CT, electronic medical image and report management is moving from the era of just create the electronic file cabinets, don't lose the films, present them where they're needed, present the reports, go from speech to text. We went through that kind of raw infrastructure technology to now where image presentation, image management, and report management is about to fundamentally change the way we think about medical imaging and reports. So what are the processes that we can eliminate today? One is we can get rid of manually assigning exams. We can get rid of all the head and eye swivels, the saccadic eye movements that are unhealthy, that are fatiguing, that lead to inaccuracies in diagnoses. You watch radiologists read exams, they spend the first 10 to 15 seconds rearranging the medical images when they're looking at complicated CTs and PETs and MRs. Let's get rid of the image rearranging. They spend time registering images in order to compare them. Let's get rid of that. We spend an enormous amount of time dictating information that's already known about the patient or the exam. Ultrasound numbers, MIPS, MACRA information, comparison citations, let's get rid of all of that. We spend a lot of time navigating through old reports. Old reports can be summarized today using large language models. We generate report impressions that are often a redundant restatement of what's already in the body of the report. We spend a lot of time looking at work lists. When we don't get paid to work at work lists, we should only be looking at medical images and clinical histories. We spend time waiting for people to help us on hold, waiting for referring doctors, and we spend a lot of time looking things up. So look, we can learn from other industries, right? This is a modern car. You look in the dashboard, you don't turn your head in order to enter the freeway and not be looking forward while you're accelerating at maximum speed in danger of rear-ending the car in front of you, right? Today, the technology exists where you receive intelligent warnings when you're about to make a mistake, and you see the heads-up display of the information that you need to see while you're paying attention to the road in front of you. And we can do the exact same thing in medical imaging. In fact, about 9 years ago, Jeremy Wolf, a friend of mine at Harvard, and I wrote a paper together that said, let's use cognitive science to create collaborative workstations. This has become my passion in life, and I want to present to you kind of real time with the examples I have, how we can bring what we know about cognitive science to creating a better reading environment for radiologists. So how are we going to reduce stress and increase productivity? How will radiologists be able to look at twice as many images in the same amount of effort, or even with less effort? And again, I know that kind of sounds impossible, but I'm always thinking of those Olympics in the 1980 when Franz Klammer is racing down from the top of the mountain, and he gets from the very top of the mountain to the very bottom in under 2 minutes. He's having a ton of fun. It would have taken me maybe the whole day to do it. And I would have been exhausted at the end, and he's exhilarated at the end. So the goal here is to get radiologists working in a state of flow, just like an Olympic skier. High attention, high enjoyment, high rate of speed, high accuracy. Okay, let's look at every step along the workflow. So the work list itself. Clearly, people do better, they're happier, they read faster when they read within their area of subspecialty expertise. So we want to be able to assign exams, but at the same time, there's nothing more annoying. Well, I don't know if there's nothing more annoying, but it's certainly annoying to have an exam type that you don't customarily read repetitively assigned to you. So while you need automated exam assignment, you need a way of excluding certain exam types that you don't read from your assignment queue. You might have 10 neuroradiologists in an organization together, and one of them says neuro doesn't include temporal bones, and another one says neuro doesn't include head and neck, they should be able to all read from the neuro pool and yet individually have the exams excluded that they don't want to read. The next thing, of course, is automated worklist prioritization. PAC systems have had worklists for 30 years now, but prioritizing the worklist based on status, based on due time, based on contractual obligations with the organizations that you serve, I think is also very important, so that when you're reading, you can be in an infinite loop where you can go next case, mark in red, peer review, next case, and the cases cycle in their proper reading order without you having to interrupt what you're doing in order to go back to the work list. And again, using the analogy of an Olympic athlete, when you see guys flying around the track competing in the 1500, someone may fall for 3 seconds. It doesn't cost the runner only 3 seconds. A 3-second fall is going to cost the runner the race. It might be 15 seconds or more, because when you're interrupted, it's not just the time of the interruption, it's the time of the interruption plus all of the reset and momentum time that you lose. It's why I would often say to technologists when they'd walk in the room and say, can I interrupt you for a minute? I would say literally no. It's impossible to interrupt me for a minute. When you interrupt me for 5 minutes, because that's how long it takes to get ramped back up. The next thing is, I would say in the work list, we're in the era of the unified work list. And to me, when you're reading from a unified work list and you have images coming in from, say, 10 different facilities that you read for, when the images are on a unified work list, you have 10 different hospitals, 10 different exam compendiums, 10 different exam descriptions, 10 different exam types, 10 different sets of modalities, 10 different productivity measures. Doesn't work. It's like taking your receipts, for tax purposes and throwing them in a shoebox and saying, well, the receipts aren't organized at all, but they're at least all in the same shoebox, so that's better than nothing. A uniform work list means normalization of all information as it enters into the system, so that it's a single work list, clean list, standardized work RVUs, standardized due times, standardized report templates, tech forms. It means reading for 10 hospitals as if those 10 hospitals are one facility. Now, let's look at the reduction of stress and waste in the reporting. The first thing I would say is, as humans, one of the most powerful delusions that we live with is the delusion that we can multitask, but we can't multitask, right? We think we're multitaskers. That's why we're willing to drive a 2-ton vehicle or a 3-ton vehicle down the highway at 80 miles an hour while fiddling with the radio. But I can tell you as a neuroradiologist, there are a few quirky ways that the human mind can multitask, but in most ways we're not multitasking thinkers like computers are. So today, if you're reading and reporting on 2 different systems, as you know, reporting is a distraction to reading and reading is a distraction to reporting. Particularly now with the advent of AI, they're going to have to be unified. We want to reduce head and eye movements with tighter displays. You probably all have a 4K TV somewhere in your home, office, hotel room. The 4K TV or the high resolution TV is an 8 megapixel monitor. It's a world standard, whether you're using commercial monitors or medical grade monitors. It's now not only possible, but it's advantageous to read off of a single monitor with less head and eye movements. What I mean by report pre-organization. So today, many radiologists start with either a blank page or a report template, but the report template is incomplete. It's now possible to begin with all of the elements of the report pre-completed that is based on information that is known about the patient, including chronic findings that are brought in from prior reports. If I'm reading a chest x-ray done at 10 o'clock and at 8 o'clock, aortic atherosclerosis and a tortuous aorta was reported, I don't want to ever have to say that again. Automatically generating impressions, extracting, and helping to automate recommendations. So there's a whole package of reporting solutions that I believe can significantly improve the quality of reports and the speed of reporting. Recognize that studies today show that between 20 and 60% of radiology reports have mistakes in them. And this is because we're driving while texting. We're trying to report and pay attention to the report and speech recognition while our attention should actually be on the medical images. The next thing is, what about image management? So we spend time labeling images. We shouldn't have to do that. We spend time rearranging images. There are better ways of comparing images, and I'm going to show you that with a demonstration of a different way of comparing images that's better than side-by-side comparison. We do things like drag our mouse cursor hundreds of meters a day, going between a point of interest in an image and a toolbar and back to select a tool, go back to the image, select another tool, go back to the image. That's unnecessary today. We shouldn't even spend our time reporting where a lesion is. A computer, when you point to a lesion in the breast or the lung, should be able to describe its location. We shouldn't even spend our time detecting the abnormality. I think radiologists 10 or 20 years from now are going to look back and say, so let me get this right. You spent your day just like with your eyeballs scanning chest x-rays or CT images as fast as you could to try to figure out where the anomaly is? I mean, geez, we're about to hit an era where a computer is going to find the anomaly, and we're going to be there to do what humans do best, which is analyze the abnormality, figure out what it is, and figure out what to do next. Remember a core lesson here of automation that goes back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, if not before then. Man plus machine always beats man or machine. Yeah, when I was at IBM, Watson could beat the world's best chess player. But a good chess player plus AI could not only beat Watson, it could beat the world's best chess player as well. Man plus machine always beats man or machine. So let's find the intersection points between man and machine so that we can work most effectively. There are also tools that we can bring into play to help people collaborate, call critical results, do things like peer review, do messaging. So I'm going to show you some examples. I've taken trade names off of these images. Obviously, I have some affiliations, but let's pay attention to the core technologies here. So, automated exam assignment. Okay, you need to see who's available, who's not immediately available, but who can become available. You need to see the list of facilities. You need to see the rotations that are available. Again, you don't need to have, in this day and age, an individual rotation that represents the idiosyncrasies of every single radiologist, because you can have a two-gear system, right? You can have the general rotations that you need to fill and the exclusions that each radiologist have. You can have those working in sync. And you need a dashboard that shows you where you are. Worklist. Worklist should be filterable and sortable. You should be able to search by any criteria in the worklist and decide the orientation, fonts, things like that related to the columns that you choose to display, because you may be reading on a laptop or on a landscape monitor, or a portrait monitor, on an 8 megapixel monitor, or something much less than that. Exams need to be sorted by criticality and by contractual due time. You should always know the number of images for an exam. And here's what's most important. You've got to have a unified list of exam descriptions. You shouldn't have exam descriptions that no non-radiologist can understand. And you have to have a standardized list of exam types so that a system understands that a CR is an XR is a DR, for example. A simple work list that queues the exams, that works for you, that pre-caches the images, so that when you go to view an exam, you're not having to go back to the work list every time, so that you can compare your productivity to your productivity last week before you implemented a certain group of technologies, and to your partners who are maybe reading at the same time in the same organization. Everything can be presented on one screen. Less head movements, less eye movements. When a report appears, the title of the report should be in English. for something that a patient can understand, that a referring doctor can understand, that a biller can understand. The comparison citations should come in automatically. There's no reason why a radiologist should have to dictate the date and time of a comparison exam or a description of that exam. Systems know what the comparison exam is. When you view a comparison report or comparison images, it should be auto-populated. The MACRA, MIPS information, we have this merit incentive pay system that requires you to put certain information in the report, should be automated. Dose reduction statements should be automated. Contrast dose, lot numbers, isotope doses, ultrasound measurements, DEXA numbers, the ultrasound technologist findings. All of that should be in the report when the report opens. In addition to that, the impression of the report can be generated by extracting information from the body of the report, at least in part. And this is, of course, the radiologist is going to want to add to the conclusion or recommendation at times. But, this is where man plus machine can do better than man or machine. When you're generating a report, I believe we're going to see the end of the day of the radiologist having to look at the report while they're generating the images. Instead of looking at the report, a dialogue like this can float over the images, and a radiologist should be able to dictate the findings in any order and have the system automatically transcribe the findings and order the findings to match the individual's template. I call that speech organization. The system should be able to extract the findings and create an impression, a summary, without the radiologist having to manually recreate the summary, most cases wasting maybe 20 to 25% of the reporting time. Instead, focus on the recommendation, focus on the further workup, focus on the differential diagnosis. Even a computer can help you with that. Now, I'm looking at a chest x-ray. I have the prior chest x-ray up next to it. I can see graphically where this patient has had prior exams, because my exam compendium automatically divides every exam by body region. So I can see at a glance this patient has previously had imaging of the brain, cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine, pelvis, left lower extremity. Okay. I can bring the report and images into one screen. And again, man plus machine. Purple means computer has detected pathology in this area. Man plus machine, let's extract the abnormalities reported on the chest x-ray previously, pre-populated into the report today, so that when I begin looking at this chest x-ray, I know where the abnormalities are going to be, and I don't have to restate abnormalities that were previously reported. Reading this chest x-ray should be as easy as saying resolved left pleural effusion in order to create a complete report. How about image arrangement? Instead of depending on very complicated hanging protocol rules that people struggle with, let's look at the images using AI. Here's an example of an MRI, an older study on row 2, a yet older study on row 3, and an older study on row 4, with the best matching image series automatically arranged side by side. About breast imaging. Today, there are all sorts of technologies available to help you find breast lesions. The blue triangle here, that just represents an AI or CAD-based detection of a breast lesion. But seriously, it takes a radiologist on average under 2 seconds to see the blue triangle. It takes 10 to 15 seconds to dictate left breast, upper outer quadrant, 2 o'clock position, mid-rest depth, seen on so-and-so views, so on and so forth. You can build a system today where you click on a lesion, it shows you the lane or depth that the lesion must be in the oblique view if you've clicked on the CC view or vice versa, and the description automatically goes into the report of the location of the lesion. Furthermore, it's possible to go directly from the statement that there's suspicious calcifications to combine that with the knowledge that this is a diagnostic exam, to automatically recommending a calcification workup, which would usually be a spot magnification view in orthogonal planes. All of that can be done by just saying suspicious microcalcifications. Click, click, the computer does the rest. Spine reporting. There's a number of AI algorithms out there today that are working their way through regulatory, a few that have been approved to automate spine reporting. Again, I'm personally sharing my philosophy. I don't necessarily need AI to diagnose spine disease for me. That's not the goal here. To me, it's a man plus machine combination because it's harder for me to edit reports sometimes than it is to start from scratch. So what I want is I want AI to put these markers up on the right images so that I don't have to talk. I can just click a few buttons and generate standardized text that describes the anaurolesthesis, disc height narrowing, decreased disc signal intensity, all of the common spine findings. I mentioned better ways to compare images. So I want you to look at these two images, and I'm coming to the end of the presentation, by the way, and tell me how many differences there are between the image on the left and the right. Now, recognize that even in the time that this slide has been up, on average, a radiologist in the US would have had to have looked at 20 or 50 different images. But right now, you're just comparing two images, and they're side by side. And the question is, when are you done? How many findings did you see? Well, you can change the way this information is presented to make good radiologists better. Simple. Take the images, you don't superimpose them, you flicker them, meaning there's no subtraction method used, but the images are placed in the same field of view in your retinas, and you flicker between the two images. Suddenly you become a motion detector, and as an animal, we're better. Particularly primates, we're way better motion detectors than we are able to do this sort of side-by-side analysis that we've been doing since Rankin, discovered the X-ray. Same thing here. Chest X-ray, chest CT, images side by side. See a nodule here. Is it bigger? Is it smaller? Do you pull out a ruler? Do you try to subtract them? You take those same images and you report them this way. I think you can say with confidence that this lesion here hasn't changed. You'll find another lesion up here, and you may even see the gorilla waving at you in the lingula. Chest X-rays, we've been looking at chest X-rays side by side, again, since Rankin. Wouldn't we be better off looking at them this way? Even if they're not perfectly registered, the changes in the findings are easier to detect and faster. Mammography, we've been looking at them side by side with, 6, 8, 10 different hanging protocols for every case. Isn't it better if you can flicker between them? See the lesion jumping off the page, even though the images are not registered or not fully registered, they're partially registered. So I hope you've gotten some food for thought out of this presentation. I'm going to open it up for questions right now, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Reicher. That was excellent. I really do appreciate that. Let's start with one of the last things that you brought up, and that was question, how are the flickered images registered? Do they need to be registered, partially registered, to be able to sync them up and be able to see them that way?
Sure. When you subtract images, if they're not perfectly registered, you get tremendous artifacts. It's a big problem. If you do, for example, breast MRI, where this technique is used commonly, right? People go buy third-party software that color codes breast MRs. Those are all subtraction-based methods. And the dilemma is imperfections lead to lesions completely losing their conspicuity. That's why those methods fail, particularly with small lesions near the chest wall, like intramammary lymph nodes or anterior mediastinal lymph nodes. Those methods fail. But with flicker, the human eye does the adjustment. So you don't need precise registration. You need approximate registration, and flicker works. Just works. We studied it. So all you need is an AI algorithm or some other method. Doesn't even have to be AI, but you need a method to say, you know what, here's the area here's the box that bounds the chest X-ray. Here's the box that bounds the old chest x-ray. Let's snap these images to about the same centering and about the same field of view. And now you flicker between them, and you can see the differences. Same thing with the breast. Any other questions?
It helps if I unmute. You said many times in the presentation it's man plus machine versus man versus machine. I agree with that, by the way. The question is, when you look at all these AI companies, even to this day, they're saying AI is better than radiology. Some are subtle, some are not so subtle. What are your thoughts?
Technology has been around evaluating ECGs since the mid to late 1990s. Every ECG in the US is read by a cardiologist. We've all heard about the autonomous cars. I'm not saying never, but they're not here. And I don't see anybody getting on airplanes without pilots, even though I wouldn't want to get on an airplane that doesn't have an autopilot. To me, it's just easy to get confused in life, but think of the common experience that you have every day in life. If you had a new septic tank that you had to dig in your backyard, it'd be a man in a backhoe, not a backhoe operating all alone. So I just think it's sure there's going to be certain things that machines do autonomously, but for the complex creative work that we do, for the role that we play in standing behind the reports that are generated, communicating those to referring doctors, I don't see autonomous radiology anytime soon. Now, I've been pretty lucky in being able to forecast what's happening in our field for now close to 50 years. And I wouldn't claim that I have a 50-year telescope, but I think we're in a man plus machine era, which, by the way, is such an opportunity for radiologists. I mean, just think about it. Every radiologist today, with the right technology, has the catnip necessary to attract the world's largest radiology group. Because if you have the right technology, we live in an extraordinarily mobile marketplace for radiologists right now. Whereas for me, my whole career, changing jobs meant, selling my house and pulling my kids out of school and moving to a new community. Today radiologists can change jobs as fast as it takes to change bookmarks in Chrome. And they do, by the way. So I think it's critical that radiologists have control over the technology that we use. By the way, I should also mention to you, there is a seismic shift occurring right now in the way reading technology is being purchased, right? Because for the last 35 years, reading technology was almost exclusively, not exclusively, but it was almost exclusively purchased by hospitals and medical imaging center owners. And today, radiology groups are buying their own technology because they cannot sustain a group if they don't have the world's best reading technology.
Thank you, Dr. Reicher. Two more quick questions. It says, most of my dictation is already formatted. How does AI reporting help improve my dictation process?
If you're dictating with a template, you're probably using, some button on your mouse, something like this. You click, click, click. You click all day long. You hop all through the report. You go between the report and the images, report and images all day long, trying to find the right place in the report. Now you start talking. Just don't need to do it anymore. You should be looking at the images. You should be talking. The text is getting transcribed. You can dictate in any order you want. That text is going to find its way into the right report template. You don't have to redictate stuff that's already in the template. You know that. You've been doing that for years. You shouldn't have to dictate any chronic finding that you elected to bring over from the old report. And by the way, technology is out there so that you don't have to do it word for word. You can just say, paste the findings from this prior complicated CT of the chest, abdomen, and pelvis into my new CT of the chest, abdomen, and pelvis. These large language models can do that. You dictate the deviations and the changes, and you're done.
Okay. Last question. Short of changing out my existing packs, how can I achieve some of the gains that you've discussed?
Well, you're going to have to change technology, and that you can accuse me of a self-serving statement there, and you'll be absolutely right. But it's what Einstein said, right? You can't. Insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, I will say, and I lived through this, guys. Getting a healthcare system to change PACS is a daunting task. But today, and I'm just seeing this all over the marketplace, going to a healthcare system as a radiology group and saying, look, we're going to read off of what we read off of. You don't tell the cardiologist what stethoscope to use. We're reading off of our system. We're putting our reading solution, we're plugging that into your PACS system. That is totally doable. And if you doubt it, I want you to reflect on this. We've all been in these big, giant hospital RFP beauty contests where millions of dollars sometimes in field trips to the RSNA and lots of other places, and giant RFPs are used to decide what PACS system you're going to get stuck with from 8 in the morning until 10 p.m. at night, or 6 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night. And then the Nighthawk guys take over at 10 p.m. and they use whatever the hell they want. And that's the rule right now. We have this total psycho absurdity going on where there's this highly disciplined, regimented method of picking a PACS system during the day, but at night, it's whoever covers gets to pick their system that they read on. And what I'm telling you is, since COVID and accelerating now the last couple of years, night is day, day is night. This is a 24-hour radiology as a service business, and the technology that you use has to be software as a service that folds into radiology as a service. And wherever you buy it, it has to be zero footprint and it has to be fast.
Yeah, I've experienced that in my years in terms of working with clients as well. Yeah, just every now and then, it's the problem may be too strong a word, but letting IT decide what is the best decision for radiologists may not be the best decision. It needs to be the radiologist looking out for the best interest of the facility, and then it'll move forward from there. But yeah, the RFP, you're absolutely correct on that. So that's it that we have for questions, unless anyone else has anything. If not, Dr. Reicher, I'd like to thank you for your time today. That was an excellent presentation. Rad HQ, I wish to thank them for sponsoring this webinar series. We will be continuing this series through the beginning of next year. Roughly every 5 or 6 weeks, we'll be putting on a new one. For those of you who registered and were live today, you will be getting notification. For those who registered but didn't show, we will be sending information out. And if last but not least, if you have any questions for Dr. Reicher, we can go ahead. He can be contacted at Dr. Reicher, do you mind if I leave your email out there?
No, happy to do it.
I'll let you go ahead and say it, sir.
M. Reicher, M-R-E-I-C-H-E-R, at synthesis.health.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will hopefully see you on the next presentation. Thank you now.
Thank you. Bye.